members. So again, thanks for taking the time. We'll do our best to keep it to within an hour, and we will have an opportunity for questions. So Pascal, if you can just move to the agenda. So for tonight, really the purpose for tonight's meeting is you've had a chance to take a look at the document. We wanted to have an opportunity to walk through some of the key points to help kind of everybody understand and appreciate what, the important aspects that we're dealing with, and what we'll need to be looking at in starting our program. There will be opportunity for questions. If any of you have not used Teams before, if you hover your cursor over the lower center of the screen, you'll get some options to come up. Some of you may have a hand in there, and that gives you an opportunity to raise your hand. So if you have a question, you can use that. If you don't have the little hand, there is a spot to, it'll say show conversation, and that's a chat area. So if you'd like to ask a question, either use the raise your hand or the chat. What we do ask is that if you have the question, it'd be specifically about the slide we're on. We will have opportunities at the end if your questions haven't been answered or anything that you're wondering about hasn't been answered through the presentation. That we will save time for Q&A at the end. So that way it'll allow us to kind of move along as quickly as possible. We really want to go through, how we got to where we are, why we need to be doing these things, and then the next steps. Pascal, if you'd like to move along to the next slide. So how we got to where we are today, we began a process of our first draft of this document early in May. We actually had two documents that were relating to facilities as well as the back to sport, back to play process. Swimming Canada launched a working group, and through our communication with Swimming Canada, it was determined that they wanted and were requesting that all the provinces work with a consistent document that would provide some consistency across the country, as well as being able to use the resources that a national plan would provide and expertise. It was believed that this would be received better by the various authorities that are required to approve documents in the various provinces, and really put together the most comprehensive plan available. So all the provinces essentially agreed to work with this strategy. So we were working with our document and sharing it with Swimming Canada, as well as they had a working group that were putting together this information. While this process was going on and Swimming Canada was working on the national document, we created a working group within Manitoba with the other aquatic sports, and we also included the City of Winnipeg and life-saving as well. So all the essentially all the aquatic stakeholders in the province were involved in our group. We felt this was important so that we can, working together, we would be able to put together a more comprehensive plan, and especially including the city in this process. So because it's their facilities in Winnipeg, and that would be consistent with other facilities needs in the rest of the province. This group met a number of times. Pascal actually chaired the committee and was leading this initiative here. On May 29th, Swimming Canada published their document. So from that point, we worked to get our document completed following their requirements and their recommendations. We submitted ours to Sport Manitoba, who in turn approved it and submitted it to the Provincial Health Authority. In Manitoba, Sport Manitoba required all sports to submit their plan through them. Our provincial government was asking and determined that they did not want to have individual sports or organizations submitting a variety of documents. They wanted to come through Sport Manitoba. Not all provinces handled it this way, but this was the way the process was handled in Manitoba. So why we have to do this? I mean, it's clear, obviously, that this is unprecedented in terms of where we are, what's happened with the pandemic, and why we have to have this document in place is critical to essentially how we move forward. We really only have one opportunity to do this well. We cannot afford to have mistakes or any issues where we would become involved in some sort of outbreak or being seen as initiating some sort of outbreak. It was also important that we had a consistent program across the province, and we followed the guidelines that were set out in our province. I can just relate one example in Newfoundland where initially the sport organizations and the provincial government had determined that all the back to sport documents would come to them through their sport organization. Some of their sports determined that they wanted to go on their own and provide their own information directly, and the province of Newfoundland essentially suspended all approvals because they were just not following the requirements that they were looking for. So up to last week, Newfoundland was not approving any sports. Don't know where that's going to go, but we want to avoid that kind of problem. Another point I want to highlight is that we want to be careful that we're not comparing what we do in our province to other provinces and places in the world. Each area has its own specific requirements. As I mentioned earlier, some provinces are not requiring their sports to submit plans. Some provinces are. In our province, we are required to have an approved plan in place before any activity can happen within organized sport. So the situations are different everywhere. We have to be aware of that, and our program has to be tailored to what our requirements are in the province. And we all have to be consistent. And as everybody knows, this situation is changing quickly, in some cases daily. With Swimming Canada, the executive directors from all the provinces are meeting weekly, and the requirements, the direction we take has changed substantially from the original discussions we've had over time, and in some cases they've changed within days of after making decisions that have been made at that level. So what we're asking is be patient, things can change. This is the first version of the document. We have set it up so that there will be any edits or revisions to the document can be done and will be done. We expect that to happen. And we all know that we're not necessarily in most places in our province close to getting back into pools yet. So be prepared that this will likely change before we actually get in the water. So what we're asking is be patient. Let's work together and make this a successful relaunch of our sport. So you'll have seen in the documentation and the information that's been seen.
Sorry, Brian. There is Dave have raised his hand. Dave,
okay.
You can unmute. Dave? I will unmute you. Can I unmute you? No. Okay, Dave, we don't hear you. So if you're not able to unmute you, maybe you can use the chat box.
Okay, I've unmuted. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, just a quick question. As far as I know, with Swim Canada, part of the process for the return to sport involved coaches on a committee, a subcommittee that sort of were part of the process. I'm just wondering why coaches weren't involved in this process for Sport Manitoba and Swim Manitoba.
we had agreed to follow the national plan, and essentially the plan that we're launching is the national plan.
Okay.
And coaches were included in that process. So that was the decision. That's how we took that decision.
Okay. Thank you. I'll mute myself.
So regarding the forms that are required, these are new documents, and they are essentially a requirement because of the new situation. The declaration are for both return to swimming and the return to outdoor activities. Those are in the package that will be required. They will be required to be signed off before any activity can happen at the club level. The Swim Manitoba waiver and release, our insurance, it protects all of us, our clubs, our members, volunteers, athletes. They have essentially brought in a new, it's called a contagion exclusion resulting from COVID-19. And that essentially means that if there is any claim that's related to COVID-19 and some other major type of illnesses, diseases, that there is no insurance protection if the individuals that are involved were not following the proper requirements and protocols. That's been in place. Came into place on April the 1st. So what that means is we need to ensure that all of our members and everybody that's involved in our organization has signed off on the waiver, recognizing that they will meet the requirements and that there is no coverage if there is a claim relating to this and there was a lack of due diligence by the individuals involved. So this document will have to be signed off by anybody and everybody that's involved in any back to sport that we're initiating now. The acknowledgement assumption of risk form is a Swimming Canada form. Similarly, they have determined that this document is required now. So this is a document that we are having completed on their behalf as well. This document will be required to be signed off for any athletes and any members that are involved, as with our waiver, that are taking action now and getting involved in the programs now. It will become a standard document that's will be incorporated in the registration packages coming this fall. So that document will only be required to be signed in this process now with clubs that are getting back to activity now. But when we come back to registration in the fall, it will be required by all individuals involved in an organization. Okay. Pascal, you can move on.
Yes, I just accept some new. Janice just enter, and yeah, perfect. So next slide. The step. You know, it will be very important that you read the document and you make sure that your staff and members read it. So tonight the goal is not to read it with you. It's just to pass throughout, you know, the key points, the some important thing that are important. Oh, there is Dave. I think you have raised your hand again, Dave. Dave? You need to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just want to get clarity on the Dryland piece. If we were to return to outdoor Dryland, do we have to comply with all of the return to swimming doc? All that stuff needs to be submitted and signed off on before we can return to Dryland, or is that separate?
You mean the form?
Yeah, look, like say next week I wanted to get my kids to the park and do some Dryland outdoors and meet them in person. Do I have to fill out all the forms and have them all completed before that can happen?
You will need 2, 3, and 4.
2, 3, and 4.
Yeah,
Not 1. Okay.
1 can wait until you're ready to go to swimming.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome. So yeah, read the document will be very important, and communication will be the key here. Communication with the staff, with the board, with the athletes, the parents. It will be very important. Also us with you, we will try to be better in communication. And if you have questions, don't hesitate to contact someone at the office. It will be also important for you to work with your local facility to develop your guideline, your club return to play guidelines. There is some here in Winnipeg. We know that it will be Sharon. Probably you will need to work with. In other area around the province, it will be your facility, and it's okay if you put us in the loop. So if we know that you're doing some work with your facility, and maybe we can help you. If they are not ready or not sure if they want to reopen or not, we are there to try to help you too. Your plan must be available. We will not ask you to send it automatically to Swim Manitoba, but if the city, if the pool, if for any reason we need it for Sport Manitoba or for the government or whatever, your plan must be available. Each club must form an assessment group to review and approve the club's return to swimming plan. If you have read the Swimming Canada document, it's really come from this document. So it's a group from 4 to 6 people, including the head coach, the president, and people like that can help with the health side of the decision. Also, we will ask you to have what we can call a health leader that will help, because there's a lot of things that we ask, some form, the presence and everything. I think that someone that can help at the welcome and make sure that all things are done properly, and they do the administration thing when the coach can do their job as a coach will help a lot, because particularly at the first step, there will be a lot of things to remember, to teach, to make sure that the athletes are going at the right place, stay at the right place, and everything. And for sure, the plan will be gradual and phased process. So we will have different step 1, 2, and 3. Melanie, you raise your hand.
Yes. First question I had was, I wasn't clear when I was reading the document if the club evaluation committee is the same as the assessment group, or is the club evaluation committee made up of a different group of individuals?
It's the assessment group, and the committee, it's mostly the same thing. If I've used 2 different terms during the document, sorry, maybe I work a little bit too quickly on it. So if it's the case, I will try to correct it and have the same wording throughout the document.
Okay. And then the next question I had was for this health leader, what's not clear to me, so is this supposed to be one leader for each group or safety group, and then so if that group meets 9 times a week, that same one volunteer is going to be expected to be at all 9 practices that week and be their leader and stay with that same bubble?
No, in the ideal world, maybe, but we know that a volunteer cannot be there for, like you say, 9 times, but
Yeah.
the first step will not be 9 times a week. So the coach will be, so if you can have always the same leader with the same coach, it's the ideal, but the first thing, if you can have a leader that are there, whatever they change during the week, but make sure that, they try to respect the distance, wash their hand. If they can have a mask or a face shield, it can be great too. Just, follow the recommendation from the health authority.
And so does the safety bubble scenario also apply to dryland training outside, or is it just for the return to swimming?
It's also for the dryland.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So next step, if you look at the equipment, it will be important that there is no sharing of equipment, whatever. Same thing with the coaches, no sharing of the board. Even in Swimming Canada, they say try to not use the whiteboard and just send the training by email, or another way to send the training before. Make sure that your physical distancing of 2 meters between people every time, whatever it's in water, outside the water, and no physical contact, no handshake, no hugs, no high five, nothing. The club will have to ensure a good management of communication with their members, a good supervision of the staff and everything. Make sure that everyone knows exactly what they have to do, and the step 1 will be really critical to make sure that we can move in step 2, step 3, and hopefully we can go to normal. To have an emergency action plan will be important too. So make sure that the coach know and the athletes know what happened if you have to apply an emergency action plan. If some symptom happen, it will be very important to isolate the individual and ensure a protective mask is applied immediately. That this individual contact its doctor too as soon as possible, maybe to take the tests. Make sure that before the athletes come back, it will be able to be clean by a test. There is a question here in the chat box. As we swim at the school, we don't expect to be able to return to the pool for quite some times. We are looking at renting in the city for as long as we need. Is this allowed as it is in our facilities? So my understanding is that until your pool will be ready, you will rent a Winnipeg pool. That's correct. And in your case, I think yes, because your facility was planned to be closed before the COVID, so it was already planned to rent in Winnipeg. So it was already your, what I can call your new training facilities. It's not because of the COVID, it was already done before. So I think we can consider it as your new facility. Next part, the return to swimming. Or maybe I go a little bit too quickly on this one. On the document, we put some best practice too, like swimmer must arrive on time and not too early to make sure that there is no gathering around. Make sure that no carpooling outside the training group. Arrive in your suit and leave after training. No changing at the facility. Arrive with full water polo. Do not water bottle. Do not use facility fountain. And at the end of the document, you have appendix with some checklists that can help the swimmer, the staff, and the parent too. And there is some other consideration to take in consideration, like just, think differently, try to find new solution, different way to do things, and it's just some suggestion. Next part, the return to swimming. As we said earlier, it's really the Swimming Canada document. We refer to the Swimming Canada. So it's a phase approach with step 1, 2, 3. Swimming Canada is working on a version 2 that should be or are expect to be available by the end of June. So they already start making some adjustment with the reality that change quickly. The actual step 1 in swimming said that it's 1 swimmer per lane for the first 3 weeks. What we know is that a lot of clubs will start Dryland first. For example, in Winnipeg, the pool will not be ready until probably the end of July. So the clubs will probably do in-person Dryland training first. So this first step will count. So if you're in step 2 in Dryland when you will start swimming, you can start in step 2 in pool. So I think it's a good information that you need to know for planification. Yes, Robert.
When you say pools, are you specifically talking about Pan Am or all the pools of Winnipeg?
For Winnipeg, we will probably have a meeting with all the clubs in Winnipeg in the next 2 weeks. But the last conversation we had with Sharon is that the city tried to open in priority the training tank in Pan Am Pool for swimming, and Cindy Clausen for diving, water polo, and artistic swimming. So it's the 2 main facility that they want to open in for us in priority. I know that they have announced last week that they want to open some outdoor pool, but I'm not sure they will be. They all can welcome clubs, but if there is something, if they can run it, if you can run it, good for you. But we didn't have this discussion because it was announced just after my last conversation with Sharon.
Okay, so if there is an option for clubs to rent outdoor pools in the meantime, that is an option?
I cannot answer to the question. It's not, it's not with Swim Manitoba. Right now, if you can have access to a pool, you can start with step 1. There is no problem with that when you will send us the 4 forms that we need to receive. And you follow, the assessment group and everything, and you have your plan, you're good to go. Whatever it's Dryland or swimming.
Okay,
or
thank you.
open water. Can be open water too.
Yeah, thanks.
Next part was, this manage your deck will be important. particularly when swimmers are leaving or arriving at the pool, particularly with the transition between groups, whether it's your own groups or the groups from another club. Like I say, particularly for Winnipeg, we will probably have a meeting with the Winnipeg clubs in the next 2 weeks to try to manage a kind of schedule to help, because the city of Winnipeg asked us to. They want to plan. We send them a first kind of draft, but it was just for them to start the process to reopen the pool. But we need to talk together. For the other clubs around the province, if you have the opportunity, let us know. If you need some advice or whatever, don't hesitate to contact us. We will try to help you as much as possible. For the return to Dryland, it's mostly the same approach. So an approach by step 1, 2, and 3. What we have put, it's a little bit the same thing as in water. Go with the priority of group if you cannot welcome everyone. So go with the senior national, junior national, westerns, men's ask, and make sure that your athletes are mature enough to follow all the rules. Group size, it's something that we are looking. We have Dave here. Raise your hand, Dave. Dave?
I'm struggling. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
As far as the last line in the document, like I'm just as an example, the group that I coach would be fine and would meet those qualifications, but the group underneath mine, there are, half the group is not captured in that criteria, and half the group is, and it would be difficult not bringing the entire group. So does that last line mean if you have a group that has athletes of both? Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly.
It's hard to bring back a group, half a group, and say, well, you're not a man's house qualifier, you can't go around the park.
It's more about a priority. So if you don't have enough space to welcome everyone and and you need to split the group or whatever, it's just a way to give you the argument to say, okay, it's here the swimmer that needs to go back at training first. But if you have the ability and the capacity to welcome everyone, to split your group in a smaller group and do it in the right way, and you have the space to do it, there is no limit.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. Group size, we have split it into different groups because I think that most of people will just return in Dryland first because most of the pool are not available. But if it's the case, we wanted to make sure that the training group follow the Swimming Canada documents so that there is no crossover between groups. It's why we have split this part in two. So one rules for if your group resume in pool training at the same time that you do Dryland. In this case, you will need to follow the pool limitation, this return to swimming limitation. So example, if you are in the training tank in Pan Am and you ran all the pool, you can have 1 swimmer per lane, so 16 swimmers. So your Dryland group should be the same 16 swimmer because Swimming Canada has to not have crossover between groups to make sure that if someone have or get the COVID, there is no spread around all the club, but only the small group. But if you are with the group and you only return to Dryland without access to any pool, we know that the government of Manitoba have lowered the or give a little bit more number about the catering. So we will go with a limit to 16 indoor and 25 outdoor for the first step, for the first 3 weeks. And one of the reasons we decide to not go really at large is because we understand that the first step, like I think I said it a little bit earlier, will be really important, and we cannot miss this one. So it's really important that the first 3 weeks we can prove to everyone that we can come back to our sport without any outbreak. So it's why for the first 3 weeks we ask everyone to do a little bit smaller group to make sure that, you know, we are doing it right. After 3 weeks, we will be able, if everything's go well, to go a little bit larger. On this part 2, we will have some information on the training instructions. So like for the coach and health leader, arriving early to make sure that you mark your area for each participant, make sure that you supervise the arrival and departure, that the screening checklists are done before the practice at home by the athletes. What we suggest is that you maybe can create something like SurveyMonkey or Google Drive, so people can do it at home and you receive it before they come to the training. So it will be easier. We have asked some questions for an app, try to create an app on the phone, but for sure it will not be next week if we are able to get it. So you will need to do it in a different way for the first weeks. Michael here, you say if Swimming Canada continue with 1% per lane well into fall, are they or Swim Manitoba going to provide financial assistance to clubs? Is the city considering providing all clubs the same charge as they do for training tank at other pools? For the other pools, I cannot answer. It's really the Winnipeg thing. So I cannot answer for the city of Winnipeg. For the 1% per lane, we know that it's for step 1. So it's only for 3 weeks. And like I said at the beginning, if you start Dryland in step 1 and you start your pool in step 2, you can start the pool where you are with your groups, so at 2 per lane. So it can go quickly. Let's see at the end of the month what will look like the version 2 of Swimming Canada document. And yes, for the first 3 weeks, I think everyone want a little smaller group, but after that, you know, it will go a little bit bigger and bigger and bigger if everything go well. That's always the thing. If everything goes well. So
Pascal,
we hope. Yep.
Sorry, when you're done, just let me know. I'll just respond to the question regarding financial assistance.
Yeah, I think I'm done. Did I answer for the question, Michael, about the 1% per lane? If you can say yes or no in the chat. Brian, go for the answer about the assistance.
So if that, I don't know who said the question was, will we subsidize pool space? We don't know yet. The city has not been able to provide us with what we're going to be looking at in terms of costs. There's a lot of unknowns. One of them is how quickly we will be able to get back up to reasonable numbers in the pool. We don't know what the pool space's availability is going to be. There's a lot of unknown questions. What I can say is that we're going to work towards finding as any means we can to make it as financially viable for the clubs to get a reasonable number of swimmers in the pool at a reasonable cost. One aspect which is we're looking into now is the federal government's announced a substantial amount of funding for additional funding, emergency funding for sport. Sport Manitoba has already been involved in that. They will be working with the federal government to work on allocating that. We know there's money available, and that money can be available not only to the provincial organization but down to the clubs. One of the discussions we will be having with them is regarding the availability of that funding to help subsidize the additional pool costs due to reduced numbers and that will be allowed to be in the facilities at a time. So we don't know the numbers on that yet. We don't know how much, but that's one of the initiatives we're looking at. So yes, we recognize that it's going to be a challenge, financial challenge for any clubs to be working with reduced numbers, and we're going to look for whatever way we can to help reduce that cost.
Okay, and other thing that we can find in the document is some guidelines for the athletes, like arriving on time to practice, mandatory screening, check-in, check-out. Athletes must retain some distancing. So, like I say, it's a quick overview of the key points. It will be important that people can look at it and make sure that they follow, the rules. And like I say, the first 3 weeks will be very, very important. So make sure that you do really well in these first 3 weeks to make sure that everyone can move at the second step and the third step after that. The rules are for everyone, so even the National Center are in the same boat. The first National Center that will reopen will be in Montreal on July 4th, and the other will follow later in July. So even those kind of swimmer are still not in the water yet. So it's the same reality across the country. There is some good information that I will try to share and create a resource section. I know that the CSCA does do a very good job right now with doing some conference, but also some discussion about the return to swim. Okay, Nick wrote something. Will different groups be at different steps of the process, or is this simply clubs wide? So yes, you can have different group. If you look at the Swimming Canada document, if you have a group example that start, your best athletes start this summer, but you have a new group that start in September, they may not start at the same place. Again, since September, there's a lot of things that can change since then, but until then. But yeah, for now, the way it's written, yes, they may not start at the same place. I hope I understand and I answer your question. Next part 2, it's, don't try to rush things initially. Make sure that you follow a good progression with your athletes. Swimmer will will be out of the water for more than 3 months. It's something that is unusual for most of them, for most of you too. So it will be important to have a good progression and make sure that you don't have any injury that will be worse, a worst case, because they will need to go out of the water again and again. So make sure that you have a good progression when we will start again in the water. On Monday, there will be, I think the coaches have received it. Not sure about I saw it as a coach. There will be a live return to swimming roundtable discussion on Zoom next Monday at 11:30 Eastern time, so at 10:30 at our times. If you haven't received the email, you can email me. There is a maximum of 150 registration. So it's the first 150 register will be able to follow. I think they will probably register the presentation and put it somewhere on their website to make sure that everyone can access it. So if there's still space available, if you think it can be a good thing to listen to this roundtable. Be a leader, lead by example, be responsible. You are a role model. The COVID is still there. There was 9 new cases in Winnipeg in the last week. So yes, there is less cases. Yes, we reopen things, but stay careful. Make sure that you, as a club, as a coach, as a president, as whatever, make sure that you act as a leader and show the example to everyone. I think that's it for me. So we are now at Q&A, and we have now hand raised. Here is Robert.
Yeah, thanks for this. I just got a question about the committee. Did you guys have a doctor on the committee advising you regarding this document?
As like Brian say, we have followed the Swimming Canada mostly. We have followed the Manitoba Health Authority. The only thing that we have that was not in the Swimming Canada, it was a little bit the Dryland part that we have bring a little bit, but we have put it a little bit more specifically, but there was nothing really special or out of the other document. So there was not really a committee. We just bring together the document to make sure that we have the approbation from the Manitoba Health Authority.
Okay, thank you.
Dave?
Hello?
Yeah, Dave.
Yes. Just a question around, can you elaborate on the plan that we have to come up with, and does it need to be submitted to Manitoba? Like our return to sport plan, like we have to have a SAP one, like safe bubble plan?
Yeah, it's a plan where you just identify your assessment committee, you identify your health leader, which group can start, because maybe some club will not be able to start with all the group, and for sure emergency action plan. Make sure that there is a communication of all these forms to your members. Make sure that there is something that say that you will follow all these rules, and it's just that you need to have a document if something's happened and there is a breakout in your club and the Manitoba Health Authority start asking questions to understand what happened. You just need to prove that you have followed all the rules and all the steps, and you have identify which coaches are with each group, and your training, example, your Dryland, you're doing your Dryland in this park or this gym or whatever. So it's just a kind of, and you can refer a lot to Swimming Canada and Swim Manitoba, a little bit like we have done. We have referred a lot of things that is from Swim Canada, just to protect yourself about whatever outbreak can come from your group.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I don't want to. I mean, that's in the document you sent. That sort of plan that we need to submit or come up with is a little bit vague as far as the criteria. So I don't want to make more work for you guys. I know you've been busy, but I would, if you could provide a little bit more, like just like you sort of outlined there, Pascal, a little more guidance for clubs, so that that will help them to create that document, right? And as opposed to sort of trying to come up with something from scratch. I know Rob and Matt did something, and it was great. But yeah, if there's any more information or sort of guidelines you can give us as far as creating that document to submit to yourselves, that would be very helpful. And does that document need to be created and submitted before outdoor dryland can commence?
I will say, in theory, I just try to remember. My brain is tired a little bit, but in theory, yes. But I will try to do something for Monday. Like I said, I want to create a kind of resources on our website, so it may be there, a kind of Canva or something that you just need to follow, things we need to see to help you to create it, and you will just need to fill it with your club specificity. And I think it can help everyone, and I don't think it will take too much time to do.
Okay, thank you, Pascal. That'd be helpful, because I know, for the full-time coaches, we have the time to be able to create those documents, but guidelines would be very helpful. But for the part-time coach and the part-time clubs, I think that's a huge task, right? To come up with some kind of return to sport for their individual clubs. So that was my question. Thank you very much. Perfect.
Before I go with the next raising, and there is some question online on the chat box. So Kelly, wondering what will happen if another province has an outbreak and they have to cut down number. Will all provinces have to follow as we are using Swimming Canada's numbers, or will we assess? Honestly, right now, the rules are, each province are governing their own rules. What can happen if there is a lot of outbreak all around Canada in the sports? Maybe the government will look at what happened, but if it's only one outbreaks in one province, it will not affect us, as long as it's not an outbreak in our province. And if it's a small outbreak in one club in our province, we may be okay. If there is a lot of outbreaks, it can, we can go back in step one or whatever, but we hope it will not happen. So try to do it well, and we wish that everything will go well.
Pascal, I just want to add to that just to be clear, if it's an outbreak in a province that's not related to swimming, it won't have the same kind of impact. If there is an outbreak within a swim organization, swim club somewhere in one of the provinces, that will have a bigger impact. There's no question. And that's what we're trying to avoid, because anything that happens within our sport in the country will create a lot of attention and a lot of negative attention towards our sport and sport in general. And that's one of the big risks and it's one of the reasons why Swimming Canada really wanted us to have a national initiative, and that's why all the provinces agreed that a national initiative is the best approach, because one club doing one thing wrong in one province could impact the whole country.
Next question from Nick, who asked if the PowerPoint and video will be available. Right now, this presentation is recorded, so we will share it on our website probably tomorrow. So if everything go well with the record, yes, it will be available. Is there an end? Will there be some type of PowerPoint or document specifically geared toward educating swimmer and parents? It's a good question. I think it's something that we may try to work in our resources section that I want to create. It's a good idea. Keep it in mind. So yes, next week we will try on different resources. Michelle, where do we find the link to the session on Monday? Sorry, I missed the communication. Send me an email. I will forward you the email. It's from Swimming Canada. Robert, if anyone needs help, please let me know. More than happy to. I think it's about the return to play. Their club's plan. It's what I understand that is willing to help. Vitaly, should the club submit all 4 documents to Swim Manitoba? If yes, risk form and waiver should be signed by all children, parents, and submitted as well. Yes, they are from all parents, all coaches, all swimmers. Now we are still working with Swimming Canada. Swimming Canada are trying to do it in a way that they will be able to get it in their RTM system, but it's not ready yet. So Brian, you can correct me on this one, but I think since that this part is ready from Swimming Canada, I think you must send it to us. Brian, can you?
Yeah, until Swimming Canada is working on an online version for their form. Once that's available, it will be done online, and we will get notification, but it will be done online. Until that happens, we will have to do it old school and have it done manually. They're working hard to get that done. It could be next week or the week after that it's available, but in the meantime, manually is the way we'll have to do the waivers.
Yeah, I confirm, Vladimir, the Panam pool will not open on Monday. Have you any news from University of Manitoba?
So right now we do have a return to training proposal, but we're not going to be open probably for another 2-3 weeks.
Okay. Give us any information when you get it. It's good to know.
Yeah, will do. I'll keep you posted.
Thanks. Any other question? No. Brian, last word? Oh, Steve, timelines on Pan Am. You mentioned end of July. I will try to have more information next week from Sharon, but it was really like they were trying to open for one of the last 2 weeks in July, but they didn't have all the information from people who are working, and so it was a little bit vague. So I hope she will have more information in the next 2 weeks. I will make sure that I have the information before we met. I will talk with her next week for sure. Robert?
Yeah, just to piggyback on Steve's question there, when Pan Am does open, will it be to the public or just to the clubs?
The plan is that Pan Am and Cindy Clausen will open in priority for sports. So the plan 2 weeks ago, it was only for swimming. So the Pan Am pool, the training tank, will only be available for swimming only.
Can I add? I just want to add to that the people at the pool do not want that to be public knowledge. They're working, to their credit, working very hard to get us back earlier. They see the benefit of having our organization where we can manage our swimmers. The clubs can manage their swimmers the way that needs to be done to get back in the facility the way it needs to be done with the proper safety requirements. So they see that as a benefit. However, as you can understand, politically, the public there will be a lot of pressure from the public if they hear the pool is opening up and they're not letting public in because they are public facilities. So I really request and ask that everybody here keep that in confidence at this point in time, that the opening, if we are fortunate enough to get in late July, and the intention is only to allow our swim clubs in. The training tank will only be available. The main tank will not be available because they're still working on it. But if we're fortunate enough to be able to get in when they're letting us in, they're going to try to do it so that it's not obvious, clear to the public, because they expect some political pressure. So they're working hard for us. So let's keep that within our swim organization.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I just want to follow up with one other thing. Like, if the training tank is open, are they working on maintenance now, or is it hiring? Because if we have a population, say, of 100 swimmers, how many lifeguards do they need to manage that? And then we can go through a different entrance if it is ready. Yeah,
we're working through all those steps. The main tank, it's maintenance. The work that they needed to have done in the training tank is done, but the main tank has a lot of work, and they're actually doing extra work because they originally believed that they were not going to have to open until the beginning of September. So they actually planned additional work, which is a positive thing because they're doing more work on the pool that clearly always needs work. So the main tank will not be available. We've been told almost absolutely will not be available to September. The training tank will be available, but it will only be available to us, fingers crossed, sometime in late July and through August, which means the plan that Pascal alluded to in terms of a preliminary availability plan is that we will look to have the training tank available to us specifically virtually all day, every day. That's our plan, and they haven't approved that yet, but that's the approach that we're going to take. So that way we can stage as many clubs that want to get back in the water at that early through a day, so that everybody has some access to pool time. That's the intention. We're hoping to get there.
Right. Thanks so much.
Okay, if there aren't any other questions, thanks again, everybody. I appreciate taking the time. We're all working to get everybody back going the best way possible, as quickly as we can, and really look towards getting back to what we can do in terms of programming in the fall. I know there's lots of questions about what the fall is going to look like. I really wish we had answers to all those questions. We don't. We don't know really what competition could look like. There's a lot of things that could happen or may not happen that will affect what we can do. All we can say is that we're constantly working through new scenarios as things happen, and the goal is to get as many of our swimmers and clubs back into the water in all the pools that we have in the province. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.